of the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, and my name is Stewart, and my last name is Kwoh.
Stuart, thank you for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask you, from your perspective as a civil rights attorney and a community leader, what was Los Angeles like in 1992 as far as collaboration among community groups that were working on urban improvement?
Well, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of collaboration in 1992. In fact, when I was on the Los Angeles City Human Relations Commission, we realized that as the city was becoming more diverse, there really wasn't a human relations infrastructure to help people get to know each other and to resolve disputes in a favorable way for everyone. I was on the City Human Relations Commission, and we got Mayor Bradley's support, who said we should add a professional to the City Human Relations Commission because there were only one administrator. And so we got that support, but the City Council didn't see the need for it, so it just stopped. And at that time, there were some major tensions brewing in, for example, different parts of the country. There were different tensions brewing in different parts of the county. One of the areas was in South Central Los Angeles. A girl named Latasha Harlins was shot and killed by a Korean store owner in a dispute over a bottle of orange juice. It was a really tragic situation. At the same time, there were some Korean store owners who were robbed and in some cases murdered in front of other family members or the store patrons. So there was high tension because there was way too much violence, and people were turning to almost a vigilante justice with guns. And so there was a big problem. And then on top of that, the police were like an occupying force as seen by many community residents, and also used too much violence. And that was seen in terms of police beatings and complaints and in sometimes killings. So there was way too much violence, but the collaboration wasn't really there.
Okay. So you said a lot of stuff that I wanted to follow up on. I'm going to put a pin in the police piece, but to go back to the community groups and the way that they were interacting, there's two pieces that I heard you say, and one was that the actual groups, the leaders of these civic groups, whose job it is to try and pull everyone together, were not cooperating. But even broader than that, it sounds like there were tensions between the actual communities. Can you talk a little bit more about that and give me a sense of what it felt like, let's say, to walk around Los Angeles at that time in a low-income area, what we used to call South Central or East LA, or what we now call Koreatown. I don't know if it was Koreatown. Well, I guess it was 20 years ago. Were people very polarized racially? Did you see a lot of mixing naturally, socially? How were people interacting with each other in different ethnic and racial communities?
Well, there was a friendly attitude at times, but there were clear tensions amongst groups. So, for example, South Central Los Angeles, that after World War II became largely African American, in 1992 was slowly turning to be a significant minority Latino. Today, it's a majority Latino. But at that time, where there were no Latino community organizations and there were some established African American organizations, there was naturally going to be some difference. And so there was very few organizational help to provide direction, to bring people together. At the same time, there were Korean Americans who were immigrants to the United States, and actually the only stores they could find that they could buy were in South Central and other places that were poor communities, because that's the only place they could afford. And so in those situations, as I said, there was no human relations infrastructure, and the companies that sold food or liquor or other items to the store owners did not have programs to say, how do you deal with this community in a positive way? And so you had tensions that were about ready to explode. And actually, our Human Relations Commission, seeing some of the incidents of violence, told the LA City Council that things were ready to explode in different parts of the city. And this is months before the riots. And yet, there was still no action to get anybody who is a professional to help the city deal with these tensions before the riots.
It sounds like the professionals who were intervening were the police, and whenever there were tensions between the groups, that was the group that was called in to help resolve it. But you said they were a strike force, not really problem solvers.
Well, I've spoken to a number of police officers since then, and they have, at least some of them, have admitted that their approach was to use force to try to resolve these tensions. And so they alienated much of the community because the force that they used on some was seen to be force used on all. And so the community actually turned against the police in many places in the city because they were seen as an occupying force, not a force that was a community element using community-based policing to get to know the community, to try to find solutions for tensions in the community by being part of the community. And so that attitude was really far different. I heard some police officers, including very high-level officers today, saying that they were cowboys going into these communities. And so they really weren't well received. And they didn't have partnerships or collaborations with community leaders or residents. So we had a very tenuous situation in 1992. And at the same time, in some of the parts of the city, like South Central Los Angeles, but also in parts of East Los Angeles, parts of the San Fernando Valley, there was a proliferation of check cashing places. And there was a serious decline in regular banks. There was part of the loss of industrial jobs really hit these poor parts of Los Angeles very hard in the 1980s. And so by the 1990s, there weren't as many manufacturing jobs in these communities. So there was poverty. There wasn't a police force that was seen as a friendly force. There was an out-of-touch political leadership, and as exemplified by the LA City Council, getting stuck on whether we should have one professional helping in the LA City Human Relations Commission. And by the way, even after the civil unrest, it still took 2 years to add anybody to the LA City Human Relations Commission that had a professional background in human relations. So it just shows we were really stuck politically, economically. There was despair, and then there were these racial tensions. And then when Rodney King was beaten, and there was this terrible verdict to quit the 4 officers, the city did explode in many different ways.